Man, I gotta tell you something that happened to me this past Thanksgiving. I've been carrying this around for months now, and I think I'm gonna explode if I don't tell somebody. You seem like a decent guy, so, hell, maybe you'll understand what I went through. Fair warning though, this story's gonna mess with your head. It sure as hell messed with mine. You ever have one of those days that starts normal and then, boom, everything changes? Like, everything you thought you knew about your own family just gets turned upside down? Yeah, well, that's what happened to me. And the crazy part is, it all started with me just trying to be a good grandfather, you know? So picture this, it's Thanksgiving morning, and I'm getting ready to drive to my daughter Leona's house for dinner. Nothing special about that, been doing it for years. But this year was different cause my wife Martha, she passed away about 6 months before all this went down. Cancer got her. 50 years of marriage, and then she's just gone. So this was gonna be my first holiday without her. And man, I was already feeling pretty raw about the whole thing. Martha always handled the family stuff, you know? She was the one who smoothed over arguments, remembered everyone's birthdays, kept us all connected. Me? I just showed up when she told me to, and try not to say anything stupid. But with her gone, I felt like I was flying blind. Anyway, I'm loading up my old Chevy with presents for my grandson Amos. Kid's 18 now, smart as hell, studying engineering just like I used to do back at the factory. Always been real close to that boy. Got him this expensive leather baseball glove and some comic books, cause even though he's technically an adult now, I remember being 18. You're never too old for heroes, right? So I'm driving through this nasty snowstorm. And I mean nasty, like the kind where you can barely see 10 feet in front of you. Roads were absolute garbage, but I figured family's worth the risk, you know? Martha always said, family is all we have left, especially after we lost our other kids in that car accident back in '95. But that's another story for another day. I'm crawling along at maybe 40 miles an hour, windshield wipers working overtime, listening to the same classic rock station Martha, and I always had on. Led Zeppelin was playing something heavy that matched my mood perfectly. The whole drive, I kept thinking about how proud Martha would have been to see Amos doing so good in college. How she always worried about him living with that new stepfather of his, Wilbur. Even the name still makes my skin crawl. My daughter married him about 3 years ago, right after her first husband ran off with his secretary. Left her high and dry with an 15-year-old kid and a pile of debt. So when this Wilbur guy came along with his steady job and his nice house in the suburbs, she jumped at the chance. Can't say I blamed her at the time. Being a single mom ain't easy. But Martha never liked him. She'd get this look on her face whenever his name came up, like she was trying to solve a puzzle, but was missing some pieces. Something's not right about that man, she'd tell me. The way he looks at Amos, like the boy's in his way, or something. I figured she was just being overprotective, you know? Martha always did worry too much about everybody. Now I wish I'd listened to her. So I pull up to their house around 3 in the afternoon. This nice 2-story place in one of those suburban neighborhoods where every lawn looks perfect and everyone's got their Christmas lights up already, even though it's still November. Place looked like something out of a magazine, all decorated for the holidays with wreaths on the door and lights twinkling through the snow. I parked behind Wilbur's pickup, grabbed the presents from the passenger seat, and that's when I see him. My grandson, sitting on the front steps in 15-degree weather, wearing nothing but a thin, long-sleeved shirt and jeans. No coat, no hat, nothing. And he's shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. But here's the part that really screwed with my head. Through the big picture window, I can see the rest of the family inside. They're all gathered around this beautiful dining room table with the good china and crystal glasses, candles flickering, the works. Looks warm and cozy, like one of those Norman Rockwell paintings Martha used to love. I can hear music playing, people laughing, having themselves a grand old time. And there's my grandson, sitting outside in weather that could kill somebody, looking like he's about to pass out from the cold. I drop those presents right there in the snow and run over to him. Driver, when I tell you his lips were blue, I mean blue like a corpse. Kid could barely form words, he was shaking so hard. His hands were pressed tight against his body, trying to keep warm. And I could see these red patches on his cheeks where the cold had bit him the worst. Amos, I'm calling out, slipping and sliding across their icy driveway. What the hell are you doing out here? He looks up at me, and the relief in his eyes just about broke my heart. But there was something else there too, fear. Real, bone-deep fear. Grandpa, He whispers through chattering teeth. I can't. I'm already pulling off my heavy winter coat, wrapping it around his shoulders before he can finish talking. The boy was ice cold, like holding a block of frozen meat. Can't what? I ask him, helping him stand up. His legs almost give out. Kid's been sitting out there so long he can barely feel his feet. And that's when he says the words that still haunt me. Driver. The words that changed everything. I'm not allowed inside. Not allowed inside his own damn house. On Thanksgiving Day, in weather that could have killed him, I look through that window again, at all those people inside, eating and celebrating, and something cold and hard settles in my chest. Something that had nothing to do with the weather. What do you mean you're not allowed? I ask, though part of me already knows the answer is going to destroy me. Wilbur said. Amos pulls my coat tighter around himself, and I can feel him trembling through the thick fabric. He said I needed to think about my actions, that I couldn't come back inside until I learned some responsibility. Responsibility for what? I was helping Mom with the turkey this morning. She asked me to check on it while she took a shower. His voice is so small, so ashamed. I just forgot to turn off the oven timer when I took it out to baste it. You forgot a timer? The turkey got a little burn on top. Not ruined, just darker than usual. He can't even look at me when he says it. Wilbur came in and saw it, and he lost it. Lost it. Over a slightly overcooked turkey. A turkey that probably tasted just fine. How long have you been out here, son? Since around 11 this morning. 11 in the morning. I checked my watch. It's past 3 now. Over 4 hours. 4 hours in weather that the radio had been warning people about all day. Telling folks to stay inside, unless it was an absolute emergency. And that's when I start putting pieces together. Driver. All those little things over the past few years that didn't quite add up. Phone calls where Amos sounded off. Visits where he seemed scared to go home. That fishing trip last summer where I noticed bruises on his arms that he claimed came from falling off his bike. Has this happened before? I ask, dreading the answer. The look he gives me tells me everything. This isn't the first time. Hell, it ain't even close to the first time. Sometimes, he whispers. When I mess up. Last month he made me stand in the garage all night because I forgot to take out the trash. And once. His voice cracks. Once he locked me in the basement for 2 days because I accidentally broke one of his beer bottles. Each word hits me like a punch to the gut. This smart, kind boy who never hurt anybody in his life. And this bastard's been torturing him for 3 years while I sat in my house watching TV. Completely clueless. Your mother knows about this. She says Wilbur's just trying to teach me discipline. That I need to be more responsible. His voice gets even smaller. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am just. Don't. I turn to face him fully, put my hands on his shoulders. Don't you dare blame yourself for this, Amos. What that man is doing to you isn't discipline. It's abuse, and it's gonna stop today. His eyes go wide with panic. No, Grandpa, please. If you make a scene, he'll just take it out on me later. He always does. Always does. How many times has this kid tried to get help only to get punished worse for it? How many times has he learned to keep his mouth shut and just take whatever that monster dishes out? I look at that house again, at the warm lights and holiday decorations, and I feel something I haven't felt since Martha died. Purpose. Clear, focused purpose. Listen to me, I say, taking his frozen hands in mine. You are 18 years old. You don't have to live like this anymore, and I'm not gonna let you. But where would I go? I don't have any money. I can't afford college without. You're coming home with me tonight. We'll figure out the rest later. I can see hope and terror fighting in his expression. Hope because maybe, finally, somebody's gonna stand up for him. Terror because he's learned not to trust that things can get better. He won't let me leave, Amos says quietly. He'll call the police, say I stole something, or that you're kidnapping me. I look at that perfect suburban house with its perfect holiday decorations, and I think about Martha. What would she do? What would she want me to do? Then I remember something else she used to say. Sometimes, Frank, diplomacy ain't enough. Sometimes you gotta fight for what's right. Let me worry about Wilbur, I tell my grandson. Right now, we're gonna get you warmed up, and then we're gonna get your things. I help him into my truck, crank the heat up to maximum, and wrap another blanket around his shoulders. Kid's so cold, he can't even hold a cup of coffee I pour from my thermos. I have to hold it for him while he sips it, and watching him struggle just makes the anger burn hotter in my chest. Tell me everything, I say as the truck warms up. Start from the beginning. How long has this been going on? And driver, the story that comes out. Jesus Christ. It's worse than I ever imagined. 3 years of systematic torture designed to break down a good kid's spirit and make him think he deserved it. Amos tells me about being made to sleep in the unheated garage because he left a glass in the sink. About Wilbur controlling when he could eat, when he could shower, even when he was allowed to speak at the dinner table. About having to ask permission for everything, walking on eggshells in his own home, never knowing what innocent mistake might trigger the next punishment. What about your mother? I ask, though I'm starting to suspect the answer. She tried to say something at first, he admits, but Wilbur told her to stay out of it, said it was between him and me. After a while, she just stopped trying. She said I needed to learn to follow rules better, that I was too sensitive. Too sensitive for not wanting to freeze to death on his own front porch. Remember last Christmas when you visited? Amos continues, and I can hear the pain in his voice. Remember how quiet I was during dinner? I remember. I thought he was just being a typical moody teenager. I even joked with Martha about it later. Wilbur told me I wasn't allowed to speak unless someone asked me a direct question. Said children should be seen and not heard, even though I was already 17. Mom didn't say anything to stop him. The memory hits me like a slap. All those times I thought Amos was just being antisocial. He was actually following orders from his abuser. All those times Martha said something seemed wrong. I brushed off her concerns. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? I asked, though I think I already know. I try to hint, he says. But you always talk to Mom afterward, and she'd tell you I was exaggerating. That I was just being dramatic, trying to get attention. After a while, I figured maybe she was right. Maybe it really was all my fault. That's when it hits me, all those phone calls over the years. Amos reaching out in his own way, trying to tell me without actually saying it. And every time, I'd call Leona to check in, and she'd smooth it over with explanations about teenage drama and normal family discipline. I'd been part of the problem without even knowing it. The bruises I saw last summer, I say, when we went fishing. Wilbur said I was clumsy, that I needed to pay better attention to where I was going. He'd grab me sometimes when he was mad, shake me, push me around. Nothing that left marks where people could see them. Nothing where people could see. This bastard knew exactly what he was doing. And the basement thing you mentioned. Amos looks out the window at the falling snow. There's this storage room down there. No windows, just concrete walls and a bare bulb. When I do something really wrong, he'd lock me down there with no food or water. Sometimes for a whole day, sometimes longer. He'd tell Mom I was at a friend's house or something. I have to grip the steering wheel to keep my hands from shaking. This isn't just abuse, it's imprisonment, torture. And it's been happening to my grandson while I sat in my comfortable house, completely oblivious. The longest was 3 days, Amos whispers. I was so thirsty I tried to drink from this old bucket down there, but the water was all nasty and green. When he finally let me out, I was so weak I could barely stand up. 3 days. 3 days locked in a basement like an animal while his mother pretended he was at a sleepover. What did your mom say about that? Wilbur told her I was being defiant, that I needed to learn respect. She said she trusted his judgment. There's no anger in Amos' voice when he talks about his mother, just this bone-deep sadness. I think she's scared of him too. I've seen the way she flinches when he raises his voice. Another piece clicks into place. Leona's not just enabling this. She's a victim too. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. This Wilbur character has probably been working on isolating her from her support system, making her dependent on him, convincing her that his way is the only way. It's a classic pattern, and I should have seen it coming. Well, I say, putting the truck in gear, it ends today. Grandpa, please don't make a scene. If you embarrass him in front of people, he'll make me pay for it later. There won't be a later, I tell him, meaning every word. You're never going back in that house again unless it's to get your things. I can see the doubt in his eyes. After 3 years of broken promises and failed hopes, he's learned not to trust that adults will actually protect him. But I'm not just any adult. I'm his grandfather, and I'll be damned if I let this continue for one more day. The front door of the house is still locked when we get there, which means they're all still inside enjoying their feast while Amos was out here freezing. I try the handle first, give them one last chance to do the right thing. Lock tight. Stay behind me, I tell Amos, and then I do something I haven't done since my factory days when I had to break up fights between drunk workers. I kick that door so hard it explodes inward like it was made of cardboard. The wood around the lock splinters with a crack that echoes through the whole neighborhood, and the door slams against the wall so hard it bounces back. The warm air rushes out to meet us, carrying the smell of roasted turkey and the sudden, shocked silence from inside. I step through that doorway with Amos right behind me, and I take in the scene that makes my blood boil. The dining room looks like something out of a fancy magazine. White tablecloth, fine china, crystal glasses reflecting the candlelight, a centerpiece that probably costs more than most people spend on groceries. Wilbur's sitting at the head of the table like a king, carving knife in hand, wearing a pressed button-down shirt and a smug expression. Leona's beside him in a green dress I've never seen before, her hair all done up perfect. There's even another little girl there, his daughter from his first marriage, maybe 10 years old, fork halfway to her mouth. They're all frozen like somebody hit pause on their perfect holiday scene. The contrast is so stark it makes me sick. Here they are, warm and comfortable, enjoying their feast like they're living in some kind of fairy tale, while my grandson was literally dying on their doorstep. Have you completely lost your minds? My voice booms through that dining room like thunder, and the little girl drops her fork with a clatter that sounds like a gunshot in the silence. Leona's face goes white as paper, and whatever she was about to put in her mouth falls right onto that perfect white tablecloth, sending gravy splattering everywhere. Dad! Her voice comes out like a squeak. What are you doing here? How did you get in? While you're sitting here feasting like royalty, I point directly at Amos, still wrapped in my coat and shivering despite the warm air. That boy was freezing outside for over 4 hours. For hours, Leona, and weather that could have killed him. Wilbur slowly sets down his carving knife and rises from his chair. He's bigger than I remember, probably outweighs me by 50 pounds, built like a linebacker. But I've been in my share of fights over the years, and size don't always matter when you're angry enough. Who gave you permission to enter my house? His voice is controlled but dangerous, like a snake getting ready to strike. This is private property, and you're trespassing. The ball's on this guy. He's worried about property rights while my grandson nearly froze to death on his porch. Private property. I step forward to meet him, and I can see him taking my measure, try to figure out if he can intimidate me into backing down. You mean the property where you locked my grandson outside to freeze while you ate dinner? The little girl starts crying, confused and scared by all the shouting. Leona reaches over to comfort her, but her eyes never leave my face. I can see the conflict there. Part of her knows I'm right, but she's too scared of her husband to say so. This is a private family matter, Wilbur says, puffing out his chest like a rooster. And you have no business interfering. No business. The rage is building in my chest like a pressure cooker about to explode. That's my grandson you nearly killed with your private family matter. Behind me, I can feel Amos pressing closer, trembling with fear about what's going to happen next. This is probably the first time anybody's ever stood up to Wilbur in his own house, and we all know it's about to get ugly. The holiday music is still playing softly in the background, some cheerful song about gratitude and family togetherness. The irony would be funny if I wasn't so furious I could barely see straight. Look at him, I say, pointing at Amos again. Really look at what you've done. Wilbur crosses his arms and lifts his chin, every inch the man who believes he's justified in whatever he does. The boy ruined our holiday dinner. He needed to learn a lesson about responsibility and consequences. A lesson about responsibility for forgetting an oven timer. You nearly froze a child to death over a slightly burnt turkey. He's 18, not a child, and this is my house with my rules. Wilbur's voice takes on that patronizing tone that makes my skin crawl. I'm trying to teach him discipline, something his mother obviously failed to do in his first 17 years. Leona flinches at that like he slapped her, but she doesn't say a word, just sits there in her pretty green dress, looking back and forth between us like she's watching a tennis match instead of a fight for her son's life. Discipline. I step closer to the table, close enough to smell the wine on his breath, to see the grease on his plate. That's called child abuse, and you're lucky I don't call the police right now. Child abuse. Wilbur actually laughs, a cold sound that makes every hair on my neck stand up. He forgot to turn off a timer and ruined a $20 turkey. I send him outside to think about his actions. That's not abuse, that's parenting. 4 hours in 5-degree weather. He's being dramatic, just like always. Wilbur waves his hand like he's shooing away a fly. Look at him, he's fine. A little cold never hurt anyone. I look at Amos, still wrapped in my coat, lips blue, whole body shaking, and this bastard thinks he's fine. This is what passes for fine in Wilbur's world. Dad, please. Leona finally speaks up, her voice shaky and weak. Don't ruin our holiday. We can discuss this later, as a family. Ruin their holiday. My grandson was sitting outside freezing while they ate dinner, and she's worried about me ruining their holiday. Your son was locked outside in a blizzard while you ate turkey. I turn to stare at my daughter. And you're worried about me ruining your holiday? She looks down at her plate, can't meet my eyes. Wilbur was he was trying to teach Amos responsibility. Sometimes boys need firm guidance. Firm guidance. That's what she calls leaving a kid outside to freeze. Leona, I say, my voice cracking with disbelief. When you were 18 and you dented my truck, did I lock you outside in a blizzard? When you failed your math test, did I make you sleep in the garage? That's different, she whispers. How? How is it different? Wilbur steps between us, his face red with anger. Because this is my house, and Amos is not my biological son. I have every right to discipline him as I see fit. There it is. The truth, finally out in the open. Amos isn't his blood, so Amos doesn't matter. The boy is nothing more than an inconvenience to be controlled and punished, a leftover from his wife's previous life that he has to tolerate. I pull out my cell phone, thumb hovering over the keypad. The movement is slow, deliberate, making sure everyone in the room understands exactly what I'm considering. Either you apologize to my grandson right now, I say, my voice deadly calm, or I call Child Protective Services and report this abuse. Wilbur's face changes when he sees that phone. The smug confidence cracks just a little around the edges. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I start dialing the first number. I've got plenty to tell them about leaving an 18-year-old outside in freezing weather for 4 hours, about locking him in basements and making him sleep in garages. Behind me, Amos grabs my arm. Grandpa, please, he whispers. If you call them, he'll just make it worse later. But I'm already past caring about later. There ain't gonna be a later, not in this house. Get out of my house, old man. Wilbur's voice is rising now, the mask finally slipping. You have no authority here. Amos is my responsibility now. My responsibility. I look around that perfect dining room. The crystal, the china, the holiday centerpiece. Then back at my grandson's bruised, frozen face. Is this how you handle responsibility? Locking children outside to freeze. The little girl is crying harder now, and Leona is trying to comfort her while shooting desperate looks at her husband. She wants this to stop, but she's too scared to make it stop. He's not a child, he's 18. Wilbur straightens his shoulders, and in my house, adults who can't follow simple instructions face adult consequences. Adult consequences for burning a turkey, for being human and making a simple mistake. Adult consequences for forgetting to turn off a timer. Adult consequences for being careless and destructive, for ruining our holiday and embarrassing our family in front of guests. Wilbur gestures towards some empty chairs where other people had obviously been sitting. Everyone had to leave because of the scene he caused. Everyone had to leave. So there were witnesses. People had been here, eating and socializing while my grandson sat outside freezing. And they'd all just left. Nobody said anything. Nobody questioned it. They just packed up and went home rather than deal with the uncomfortable truth of what was happening. Grandpa, let's just go. Amos whispers behind me. Please, I don't want to cause any more problems. The defeat in his voice breaks something inside me. This boy, this smart, kind young man, has been beaten down so thoroughly that he thinks he's the problem. He thinks he's causing trouble by asking for basic human decency. You're not causing problems, son. I say loud enough for everyone to hear. You never were. I turn back to Wilbur, and something cold and final settles in my chest. You have 30 seconds to apologize to my grandson for what you did today, or we're done here. I'm not apologizing for anything. Wilbur crosses his arms, chin raised in defiance. And I'm certainly not taking orders from some bitter old man who can't accept that his precious grandson needed discipline. Bitter old man, because standing up for an abused kid makes me bitter. Then we're done here. Amos, go get your things. You're coming home with me. The silence that follows is deafening. Even the little girl stops, crying for a moment. You can't just take him, Leona says, her voice barely a whisper. Watch me. I place my hand firmly on Amos' shoulder, guiding him toward the stairs. Go pack whatever you need. We're leaving. Dad, you can't do this. Leona follows us, panic rising in her voice. You can't just walk into our house and take my son. I can and I am. Unless you prefer I call the authorities and let them sort it out. Amos leads the way upstairs, his steps quick but uncertain. I can hear Wilbur behind us, his heavy footsteps on the hardwood, muttering threats about kidnapping and arrest. This is kidnapping, he calls out. I'll have you arrested. Good luck explaining to the police why my grandson was sitting outside in 5-degree weather for 4 hours. I call back without turning around. The upstairs hallway is narrow and dark, nothing like the warm, welcoming downstairs. Amos leads me to a room at the very back of the house, the smallest, coldest room I've ever seen. It's barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser, no heating vent that I can see, and the single window faces north where it'll get the least sun and the most cold air. This isn't a bedroom, it's a punishment cell. This is where you sleep? I ask, taking in the bare walls and sparse furnishings. Amos nods, already pulling clothes from the dresser and stuffing them into an old duffel bag. Wilbur says the basement room is for guests and the other upstairs room is for his daughter. His daughter gets the good room. The guest room, which probably never has guests, gets better treatment than my grandson. Take everything that matters to you, I tell him, standing guard at the doorway. We're not coming back for anything. Amos, think about what you're doing. Leona appears in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. This is your home. This is your family. Some family. Amos mutters, folding his Dayton University sweatshirt into the bag. Real families don't lock each other outside to freeze. Wilbur was just trying to teach you responsibility. By giving me hypothermia? Amos looks up at his mother, and I can see 3 years of hurt and disappointment in his eyes. Mom, he made me sleep in the garage last week because I left a glass in the sink. A glass. He has high standards. He wants you to be better. He wants me gone. Amos says quietly, zipping up his bag. And you know it. The truth of it hangs in the air like smoke. This was never about discipline or responsibility or making Amos a better person. This was about driving him away, making his life so miserable that he'd leave on his own. The only problem was, Amos had nowhere to go. Until now. We make our way back downstairs, Wilbur waiting at the bottom like a bouncer. His face is red with rage, hands clenched into fists at his sides. You leave my house, boy, and you don't come back. Ever. Fine by me, Amos says, and I hear real strength in his voice for the first time all day. The front door is still hanging open from when I kicked it in, cold air pouring into the house and making those perfect holiday decorations flutter like dying leaves. Through the opening, I can see my truck in the driveway, engine still running, exhaust visible in the frigid air. Amos, Leona calls out as we reach the door. Please don't do this. I love you. He stops, turns back to look at his mother one last time. For a moment, I think maybe she's finally going to do the right thing, finally going to choose her son over her husband. If you love me, Mom, he says quietly, you wouldn't have let this happen. And that's it. 3 years of abuse summed up in one simple sentence. If you loved me, you wouldn't have let this happen. We walk to the truck in silence, our breath visible in the freezing air. I throw his bag in the bed and help him into the passenger seat, then walk around to the driver's side. Through the front window of the house, I can see them all standing in the entryway. Leona crying, Wilbur red-faced with rage, the little girl peeking around the corner. A picture-perfect family, if you don't look too close. You ready? I ask, putting the truck in reverse. I've been ready for 3 years, Amos says, pulling my coat tighter around his shoulders. I back out of that driveway and onto the street, past all the other decorated houses where normal families are probably finishing their Thanksgiving dinners in peace. The radio's still playing classic rock, the heater's working perfectly, and for the first time since I arrived, Amos looks like he can actually breathe. Thank you, Grandpa, he says quietly as we turn onto the main road. I can't believe you actually came for me. I should have come sooner. I tell him, meaning every word. I should have seen what was happening. I tried to tell you, but I didn't know how. We drive in comfortable silence for a while, the familiar weight of family responsibility settling around my shoulders like Martha's favorite quilt. This boy needs protection, needs a safe place to heal and grow into the man he's meant to become. But the story doesn't end there, driver. Oh no, it's just getting started. About 3 hours later, we're sitting in my kitchen eating some leftover chicken and vegetables. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and filling and nobody's gonna lock anybody outside for burning it. Amos is finally starting to thaw out, color coming back to his cheeks, when we hear car doors slamming in my driveway. Then comes a knock. Not the gentle tap of a neighbor or the hesitant rap of someone unsure. This is the authoritative pounding of someone who expects immediate compliance. Amos nearly drops his coffee mug. "Grandpa, stay behind me," I tell him, moving toward the door. I flip on the porch light and look through the peephole. 2 uniformed police officers are standing on my doorstep, and behind them, like predators waiting for their moment to strike, are Wilbur and Leona. "Mr. Burke," the lead officer calls out. "Police, we need to speak with you." I take a deep breath and open the door, keeping my body positioned to block their view of Amos. "What can I do for you, officers?" Wilbur immediately steps forward, pointing an accusatory finger at me like I'm some kind of wanted criminal. "Officer, this man kidnapped my stepson. He broke into our house and took the boy without permission." The lead officer, middle-aged guy with tired eyes who's probably broken up 1,000 family disputes, holds up his hand to quiet Wilbur. "Sir, we need to sort out this situation. Mr. Burke, is there a young man named Amos Green on these premises?" "Yes," I say simply. "My grandson is here. He kidnapped him." Wilbur's voice rises dramatically. "Broke down our door like some kind of criminal and dragged the boy away from his family." "Is the young man here voluntarily?" the second officer asks, pulling out a notepad. Before I can answer, Amos appears beside me, still wrapped in the blanket from my couch. His voice is quiet but clear. "I want to stay with my grandpa." Wilbur's face flushes red. "See, he's been filling the boy's head with lies, turning him against his own family." "What lies?" I step forward slightly. "The truth about how you left him outside in freezing weather for 4 hours. The truth about how you've been abusing him for 3 years." "Abuse?" Wilbur laughs, but sounds forced now. "I was teaching him responsibility. The boy ruined our entire Thanksgiving dinner and needed to learn there are consequences for his actions." The first officer looks between us with that weary expression cops get when they've broken up too many family disputes. "Mr. Burke, we're going to need everyone to come inside so we can discuss this properly." I step back reluctantly, letting the officers enter my living room. Wilbur follows immediately, strutting in like he owns the place. Leona trails behind with her eyes fixed on the floor, looking smaller and more defeated than I've ever seen her. "Now then," the officer says, taking out his notepad, "let's start from the beginning. Mr. Green, you claim this man kidnapped your stepson?" "Absolutely." Wilbur straightens his shoulders, putting on his reasonable authority figure act. "I came home from work to find my front door broken and Amos gone. When I called around, neighbors said they saw an older man forcing the boy into a truck. Forcing, like I dragged him kicking and screaming instead of saving him from hypothermia." "Officer," I say, keeping my voice calm, "I rescued my grandson from child abuse." "That's what he keeps saying." Wilbur shakes his head sadly. "But the truth is, he's never approved of my marriage to his daughter. He's been looking for any excuse to cause trouble." The officer turns to Amos, who's standing close enough to me that I can still feel him trembling. Not from cold anymore, but from pure fear of what might happen next. "Son, did this man force you to come with him?" "No, sir." Amos' voice is barely above a whisper. "He saved me." "Saved you from what?" Amos glances nervously at Wilbur, then back at the officer. "From freezing to death on the front porch." The second officer looks up from his notepad. "Explain that." "I accidentally burned the turkey this morning. Wilbur made me sit outside in the cold to think about my actions. I was out there for over 4 hours in 5-degree weather." "He's exaggerating," Wilbur says quickly. "It was maybe an hour, and he was dressed warmly." "An hour? This bastard's still lying, even with the cops right here." "Officer," I say, "I have witnesses. My grandson was sitting on that porch in a thin shirt and jeans when I arrived at 3:15. He'd been there since 11 in the morning." The first officer looks at Wilbur with new interest. "Sir, is it true you made the young man sit outside as punishment?" "Briefly, yes." Wilbur's confident facade is starting to crack, but he's making it sound worse than it was. "In freezing weather for several hours. Look, sometimes teenagers need firm discipline." The mask is slipping now, showing the real Wilbur underneath. His mother and I agreed that. Mom didn't agree to anything. Amos interrupts, his voice getting stronger. She just didn't stop you. All eyes turn to Leona, who's been silent through this whole exchange. She's standing by my doorway like she's ready to run, hands clasped tight in front of her, looking like a woman who's finally reached the moment of truth. "Ma'am," the officer prompts gently, "what's your version of events?" I watch my daughter struggle with the biggest decision of her life. She looks at Wilbur's expectant face, then at Amos' hopeful eyes, and I can see her whole world balancing on the edge of what she says next. "Mrs. Green," the first officer says, "we need to know what really happened today." Wilbur moves closer to his wife, and even I can see the subtle intimidation in his posture, the way he looms over her, the warning look in his eyes. "Tell them, honey," he says, voice dripping with false sweetness. "Tell them how your father has been poisoning Amos against our family." The officer notices it too. "Sir, please step back and let your wife speak for herself." Leona takes a shaky breath. Amos did burn the turkey this morning." And the officer prompts. And Wilbur was upset, very upset. Her eyes dart to her husband, then quickly away. He said Amos needed to learn responsibility by sitting outside in freezing weather. Another glance at Wilbur, who's standing rigid with barely controlled anger. "Yes," she whispers. "How long was he outside, ma'am?" Since around 11. "Until when?" "Until my father arrived." Her voice is getting smaller with each word. "Around 3:15. The officer does the math quickly. Over 4 hours in 5-degree weather. She's making it sound worse than it was. Wilbur interjects, but his voice has lost that confident edge. "No," Leona says suddenly, and everyone turns to stare at her. "You locked the door. You told me not to let him in no matter what." The silence that follows is deafening. Wilbur's face goes from red to white and back to red again. "Leona," he says, his voice dangerously quiet. "What are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth." She looks at Amos, and I can see tears starting in her eyes. "For once in 3 years, I'm telling the truth." The officer leans forward. "Mrs. Green, has this kind of punishment happened before?" The floodgates open. "Yes." The word comes out in a rush, like she's been holding it back for years. "He's made Amos sleep in the garage, in the basement. He's locked him out of the house overnight." Her voice grows stronger with each confession. "He controls when Amos can eat, when he can shower, when he can speak at the dinner table." "Leona, shut up." Wilbur's mask has completely slipped now. "You have no idea what you're doing. You'll destroy everything we've built." "What have we built?" She turns on him with sudden fury. "What have we built except fear and misery? Look at my son. Look what you've done to him." I watch Amos' face transform as his mother finally stands up for him. 3 years of doubt and self-blame seem to melt away as he realizes that someone else can see the truth of what he's endured. The first officer stands up and moves toward Wilbur. "Sir, I'm going to need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back." "This is ridiculous." Wilbur backs toward the door. "You're going to arrest me based on the word of a bitter old man and his delusional daughter?" "Based on physical evidence and multiple corroborating testimonies about child endangerment," the officer says calmly, pulling out his handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." As they read Wilbur his rights and lead him toward the door, he turns back to Leona with pure venom in his eyes. "You'll regret this betrayal. You'll lose everything. The house, the money, everything. You'll be nothing without me." "I'd rather be nothing," she says. And for the first time in years, she sounds like the strong woman who raised Amos on her own. "Then watch you hurt my son." The door closes behind the officers and their prisoner, leaving the 3 of us alone in my living room. Leona collapses into my recliner and starts crying. Not the quiet, careful tears she'd shed before, but deep, wrenching sobs that seem to come from years of buried pain and guilt. Amos goes to her immediately, kneeling beside the chair. "Ma, it's okay. It's over now. I'm so sorry," she whispers through her tears. "I should have protected you. I should have been stronger. You were strong tonight," I tell her, settling back into my chair by the fireplace. "When it mattered most, you chose your son over your husband. That took real courage." The fire's still crackling peacefully in the grate, and for the first time in months, my house feels like a real home again. Not just because my family is safe, but because the truth has finally been spoken and justice is being served. What happens now, Grandpa? Amos asks, looking up at me from where he's comforting his mother. Now we heal. I say simply, we take our time, and we heal. But driver, the real story is what happened after that night. See, that was just the beginning of everything changing. Wilbur got convicted of child endangerment and lost his job at the grocery store. Had to move back to Cleveland to live with his sister, good riddance. Leona divorced him and moved in with me and Amos. Took her a while to find her footing again, but she got a job at the local library and slowly started rebuilding her confidence. And Amos? That kid got a full scholarship to Ohio State. Full ride for engineering, just like his old grandpa used to do. Smart as hell and twice as determined as I ever was. That was 4 months ago. Now every morning I wake up to the sound of my family making breakfast together, talking and laughing like families are supposed to do. Leona's working on her college degree, something she never got to finish when she had Amos so young. Kids thriving in school. Made Dean's List his first semester. We turned the basement into a real bedroom for him. Not some punishment cell, but a comfortable space with good heating and windows that actually open. He's got friends now, real friends who treat him right. Even got himself a girlfriend who thinks he hung the moon. But you know what really gets me, driver? Amos wants to switch his major to social work. Wants to help other kids who are going through what he went through. This kid who had every right to be bitter and angry. He wants to use his pain to help others avoid the same thing. Martha would have been so proud of all of us. Not for what we survived, but for how we chose to heal from it. I think about that Thanksgiving night a lot. About how many kids are out there right now, sitting on front porches, sleeping in garages, walking on eggshells in their own homes. How many adults are looking the other way because it's easier than getting involved. And I think about Martha's voice, telling me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up when it counts, telling the truth even when it's hard as hell, and protecting the people you love no matter what it costs you. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't decided to surprise them that day. If I called first like I usually did. Would Amos still be in that house? Would he have made it through that winter? I try not to think about it too much, but damn, sometimes life comes down to just showing up at the right time. The kid asked me once if I was scared when I kicked down that door, if I worried about going to jail or getting sued or whatever, and I told him the truth. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about Martha, about what she'd want me to do, about how sometimes you gotta break a few things to save what's important. That's the thing about being a grandfather, driver. You realize that all the stuff you thought mattered, your comfort, your routine, staying out of other people's business, none of that matters when your family needs you. What matters is being willing to kick down a door when you have to. What matters is showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We go fishing together now, Amos and me, every weekend when the weather's decent. Kid's got a good cast, catches more bass than I do most days. We don't always talk about what happened. Sometimes we just sit there in comfortable silence, watching the water and knowing we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Last week he told me he's thinking about proposing to his girlfriend after graduation. Said he wants to build the kind of family he never had growing up. One where kids feel safe, where love doesn't come with conditions, where nobody has to earn their place at the table. That's when I knew we'd done something right. You know? Not just save him from that situation, but helped him see that families can be different. Better. That love isn't supposed to hurt. So yeah, driver, that's my story. Started with me just trying to be a good grandfather. Ended with me learning what family really means. Sometimes you gotta break down a door to save someone. Sometimes you gotta choose between keeping the peace and doing what's right. And sometimes, if you're real lucky, you get the chance to help someone build something better from the pieces. That's what we did. That's what we're still doing, one day at a time.